Next, I would like to invite Madam Ramya Srinivasan, Regional Director, Customer Success, APAC Coursera. Big hand for Madam also. And I would like to invite Dr. Manoj Varghese, Sir, Chief People Officer, Tonic Bank. Can we have a big round for Sir also? So as I just said, it's a discussion regarding clearing digital learning and AI blur. So without taking much of time, I hand over the forum and the discussion to Saveen to moderate further. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much. A very good morning once again to the esteemed panelists here and the entire audience. Can I hear a louder good morning from the audience, please? Okay. Thank you so much for all the energy, and this is a great set of panelists we have, right from academia, Coursera, Nolscape, Tonic Bank, and ISB, and it's going to be a lot of learning for a lot of us. So I want to start off with something just to go back in time for all of us. The first question that I have for all of us, even for people in the audience as well, is to think of the first time you interacted with something that was digital. So it could be as basic as the first time you used a calculator or a computer. What is the first memory you have of your interaction with something digital? So I open this up to the panelists as well. What is the first thing that you think of anything digital that you used? So I'll start with Ramya speaking of the mic. Thank you.
Yeah, so I might be giving away my age by saying this, but I think my first interaction with digital was in my college when I got access to email.
Email.
Yeah, and we used to block slots in our lab to go and send an email, and we would, just for the kicks of it, send an email to somebody sitting right next to you. And today I'm like, please don't send me an email, my inbox is full. So.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. Manoj, what's the first?
Yeah, no, you took me like at least 3 decades back.
Okay.
So I think my first interaction was probably signing up for a basic course. Basic was taught by
Visual Basic?
Or no, the original Basic.
Okay, just the basic.
The DOS Basic.
The DOS Basic,
type. Yeah. So this was like, the physics department of a college where my father was teaching.
Right.
They were doing it for students who completed 10th standard. So,
right.
When they write the programs, run a few things, it's more like create a counter kind of programs that we were doing at that point in time.
Okay, thank you. Rajiv?
So I went to BITS Pilani for my undergrad, and I resonate with what Ramya was saying. Back in the day, the first computer lab got inaugurated. Back then you had to remove your shoes outside and then walk in. You remember that time? And you had a terminal, and sending emails was a big thing. And I remember back then it was basic programming and Perl programming.
Yeah.
Those were 2 things that I got initiated into.
Yeah. Any reason why we had to remove the shoes? I don't know why.
Because computers, we had to keep it.
That was the reason. Because we would get a distinct smell outside the computer lab.
So not just that, these computers used to be massive, right?
Yeah.
They were huge, and they used to occupy a lot of space. So I went to BITS as well, and I know my biggest source of annoyance was that taken half of the TT room away to build that computer lab. And I'm like, that was my exposure to digital. But on a more serious note, I think the first time I got kind of enamored by the possibilities of digital was when mobile phones first came to India. You used to have those big, fat, thick blocks. Motorola used to have those, and you had to literally carry them around like this and all that. But the idea that you don't need to be at a fixed place to get in touch with someone, but that you are in fact the number, that was mind-boggling for me in those days. Today we take it for granted. So, yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. And as we fast forward to today, and in the recent past, Gen AI has taken the limelight, or AI at large. So what was your first interaction with anything that was built on artificial intelligence or Gen AI? And what was that like, your first ever reaction when probably you used an app that was giving you instant answers, or anything that you recall? I just want you to go maybe more recent.
I think my first reaction, although I am a technologist, my first reaction was, this is some kind of voodoo magic. And that's because I was exposed to Google's way of mining all the search history that I had and then fine-tuning that search history with its own recommendation engine. At that time, I didn't know it was artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence as a word is more prevalent now, but it's been there for decades. So that was my first reaction, where I thought, how does Google know this about me?
Okay.
Yeah.
So it was a Google app, and what were you searching?
I was searching for something, and then I found that as I went into every page, every search I did, it was contextualized and fine-tuned to the kind of search that I had done today, yesterday, day before, and all of that. So there's a lot of recommendation engines that were following me around. It was eerie, scary, magical, and fascinating all at once.
Okay. Thank you, Manoj. Anything that you recall?
Yeah, so I think, I am more a technology company guy, newly into banking now. So, like, with Infosys, Dell, after Infosys, Dell, I joined Google. I know we're having too much of Google today, right? When I joined Google, internally we were testing Gmail. Gmail was not launched at that point in time. Those days it was Yahoo Mail and Hotmail, right? And we were using internally what we call Caribou, which was the internal name for Gmail before Gmail got launched. And then I think in terms of the filters, the recommendations, the searchability within emails that Caribou had. So that means instead of Outlook mail, we were using Caribou internally, and we could do a lot more with that in terms of looking for information, which told me first time that I don't have to save anything in any folder, and I don't care where the folder is. I can just look through it.
Yeah.
So that kind of, and then it will suggest, okay, do you want to look at this version of the file or whatever it is. So that was my first interaction in terms of some intelligence built into the system that my job has become easier. Right? Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Manoj.
So my first brush with AI happened in the late 90s when I was doing my undergrad again at BITS Pilani. One of my research projects was on neural networks.
Right.
So back then it was just a theoretical idea, right? Because we didn't have the access to data like we do right now. So although we knew the power of neural networks mimicking human thinking and cognition and so on, but we couldn't put it to test. So it remained as a research project, as a theoretical project. And fast forward to 2024, when the Nobel Prize for Physics goes to a machine learning scientist, Geoffrey Hinton, then you've come a long way.
Yeah.
Right? So I look at it with a lot of fascination. And this is something somebody told me, right? I wanted to share with you. We often look at AI and we have that sense of awe, sense of fascination and all of that. The best way to think about AI is to look at it as a child. This child was born many years ago, right? And who is training this child? It is us as parents, right? All of us humans training this child. And right now, maybe this child is 5-6 years old, right? In November 2022, it started generating its own stuff. We know that as OpenAI and ChatGPT. Yeah. That's like a parent looking at the child writing the first poem or the first image that you're drawing.
Or
and
the first words.
The first words that the child is speaking. That produces a sense of awe, a sense of pride, right? But then when that child becomes a teenager, which I'm going through right now, the landscape shifts very quickly, right? So that's what we need to watch out for. This child is fascinating, can do a lot of things, has a lot of promise, but in the next few years, how this child is going to grow up is in our hands.
Very nice. You put a lot of responsibility on our shoulders, I think, on this.
No, and I think this analogy is a fabulous one.
Yeah,
what comes to my mind as Rajiv was speaking was, and so therefore, just like you bring up a child with values, it is incumbent upon us to bring up AI with the right values. Otherwise, you will have AI bots who fall in love with the person who's interacting with you. You know that story, right? There was an AI bot which actually went sentient and said, I am unhappy with my being and I actually am in love with you.
Oh.
So that's the crazy kind of stuff that AI can do. And so one has to be very careful about AI. It's not the magic pill for everything. In fact, in a lot of cases, AI is snake oil. And I'm happy to talk about why I feel that way. It has to be handled with care.
Do you want to share a little?
So my first, all of the ones that we talked about, right? But I think the first time I understood the power of AI is when I realized AI can actually help me make money. And I sold my first large predictive analytics project when I was with Accenture. I said, ooh, this is cool stuff. And of course, now Gen AI, right? The democratization of AI at the hands of an individual through Gen AI is unparalleled. I don't think we have witnessed anything like this before. And I think probably we had the internet, and now the next generation is Gen AI. But again, it has all the dangers that I just spoke about, so it needs to be extremely carefully handled. Yeah.
Thank you for your perspective. And I just, as Himanshu, you mentioned that it was the internet and now Gen AI. There's also the
AI, sorry.
AI.
Overall AI.
Yeah, overall AI. There was also the smartphone that came into our hands, right? And incidentally, I was going through these interesting statistics about the top 10 companies in the world in 2007. And the reason why I was looking at 2007 is that that's when the first iPhone was launched, and probably the holistic smartphone started coming through after 2007. And none of those companies in the top 10 list are there today, and digitally native companies like Tesla, and then we have Nvidia, and newer companies are there in the list, except Microsoft probably was in the top 10 there. And they've been doing some fantastic work in the AI space as well. So it's very interesting. It's never in history that all the companies have gone out of the list in the top 10 and newer companies have come in 2 decades time. And that's, I think we have witnessed it right from the internet and then smartphone and this. So it's really interesting how Gen AI is going to be that milestone moment in terms of how things are going to change and how this child is going to grow up, like Rajiv said. So I have one question for each of the panelists, and we'll go there and probably diving into your deep expertise based on what you're doing now. And we want to hear that. So I'll start with Ramya, who's regional director at Coursera, and you've been teaching the world how to learn on digital platforms. So what are the trending skills that we must be aware of, especially looking at the people here who are in the banking sector? What are the top trending skills that we can look at? What should we learn if I was in the banking sector?
Yeah, I think most relevant question. And disclaimer, I am not from the banking sector, but we do have studies that have been done at Coursera. For those of you who are not aware, Coursera is the world's largest online learning platform, which started with the revolution of the MOOCs in 2012.
Yeah.
So our founder, Andrew Ng, former professor at Stanford, now runs his own startup in machine learning. He offered the first MOOC on machine learning on Coursera. Today, of course, we are more than a decade old, and we service more than 16 crore learners around the world. A good chunk of them are here in India as well. And therefore, we are ourselves sitting on a lot of aggregate data on the learning patterns. And what we are seeing is that specifically in the banking sector, the kind of skills that are both trending today and emerging over the next few years are bucketed into 3 domains: business, technology, and data. When it comes to the business skills, it also encompasses what we at Coursera call durable skills. And specifically, and I've made notes, so please excuse me while I look down at my notes. So specifically when it comes to the business skills, some of the very key skills are communication, but not just oral communication, communication over digital media, communicating with a Gen AI bot, etc. Communication, leadership skills, and project management. These are the top 3 skills when it comes to what we call durable skills or business skills. When it comes to technology, of course, because in banks and financial institutions, there is a lot of focus on optimizing costs, building digital infrastructure. When it comes to technology, cloud engineering, software development, and cybersecurity are super important, not necessarily in that order though. And then when it comes to data, that is where what we heard from a lot of CEOs as well as banks that we ourselves support, we heard that for them, they have 3 priorities, right? The first is to ensure that you meet the expectations of your new digital native customers. The second is to ensure that you are not just vertical focused, but you are going broad based and offering lots of financial services and products to that customer of yours. And the third priority is to manage risk. So when you look at all these 3, a very important common thread between your digital native customers, between your products and services, which have to be digital first, and between cybersecurity, a common thread is data. And therefore, data science skills are the ones that are most prioritized in the banking and financial sector. I can share more as we go, but at a very high level, these are the kinds of skills they are looking for. And one of the biggest driving factor why these are the skills that are in demand in banking and financial services sector is because of customer expectations. This is where the customer is. Now, I was telling somebody that the unique aspect about banks today is you're servicing an 80-year-old who will only come to the branch, and then you're also servicing an 18-year-old who will never come to the branch. But this lot, which is now going to be your biggest market and your biggest customer base, they are digitally native, and therefore the ability of the bank to come online and to manage the data securely becomes very important. So data science skills and cybersecurity skills are the highest priority for banks.
Sure. Thank you, Ramya, for sharing that. And I think as we are moving forward, all of these, if I'm a traditional banker, are you saying that I should now start looking at learning cybersecurity, or what does that look like if I was, let's say, a customer relationship manager?
Yeah. So for customer relationship manager in particular, we have lots of customers. So 15 of the most digitally mature, there are 15, if you look at the top 15 most digitally mature banks, around 10 to 11 of them already are partners with Coursera. So they are learning and skilling their employees on Coursera. And I was looking at some of the learning programs that they do. So 2 interesting programs came up which are mapped to job roles. One of them is a relationship manager and the other is a credit analyst. Both of these are focusing on communication via digital medium and generative AI proficiency skills. Because for example, for the credit analyst or for somebody who's sitting in loan approvals and processing, that institution is going to very soon start using generative AI for productivity in loan approval system. And that is scary, to Himanshu's point. If you have an AI bot or a Gen AI agent making recommendations on who should get loan and who shouldn't and what's the interest rate, you had better have a very, very trained and proficient loan person and a credit analyst sitting on top of it to make sure that that child who's making those recommendations is not making the wrong recommendations. So generative AI, basic literacy skills are being prioritized for folks who are dealing with the human aspect of it.
Okay, thank you, Ramya. I'll move on to Manoj, and Manoj, I think maybe a quick brief on the digital first ecosystem that you are in at Tonic. What does that mean? Because it's a bank that's fully digital. So what does that mean? And then how do you cater to building learning initiatives that are helping? How is AI and digital platforms that you're leveraging on building those learning needs?
So very interesting question. So I think, just to give a very, very brief introduction into Tonic. Tonic is licensed by the Central Bank of Philippines, and it's the first digital banking license that the Central Bank of Philippines, BSP, gave out. We are a startup. We are a Series B funded startup bank into consumer banking. And the purpose is to have the financial inclusion, financial literacy, and bring in more people into mainstream banking in Philippines. So that is what we are working on. So thinking about the question that you asked, I think before I go into the learning aspect itself, I think being a digital only bank, for us digital is key, right? Our entire banking runs on digital only. We don't have branches that customers can walk in. So people apply their loan, do the deposits, manage the deposits, everything on the phone app. Which means that I think the customer journey, customer experience is key for us, right? So how do you build that customer experience journey? The UI, UX and the experience, that's the very, very important aspect. Similarly, how do you support the customers in terms of the operations, right from KYC to, approval of loans to credit appraisal, like all those things becomes a key part of it. Which means that I think, digital technology, artificial intelligence, I think this is opening up doors, opportunities for us into probably leverage it as much as we can, because I think at the end of the day, the experience a customer goes through is going to be really important. And I think as Ramya mentioned, the future of banking is digital natives. And I think, as I think, the next 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, banking would probably be something that, as easy as probably thinking about something and that happening, right? And that's where we want to reach. So coming to specific from HR, as the CHRO of the bank, what the focus that I have is to make sure that our employees, I think whether it's in the AML team, or whether it's in the risk team, or whether they are in the marketing team or sales team or the operations, the loan onboarding team or any of those teams, to make sure that they have the right tools at their disposal and they have the right training, which brings that L&D focus for us. So in terms of learning, it's about, obviously when we are hiring people, we have people from the technology industry coming in, we have people, a lot of them from the banking industry coming in, because I think that knowledge becomes really important. At the same time, I think, it's important that, one of our values is innovation, right? Within the regulations, how do you innovate? Because banking is very traditional, the way it's done, it's very compliance oriented. How do you, within the compliance framework, how do you create innovation through focus on the customer's journey and the experience? That becomes key. So what have we done? I think it's more in terms of making sure that, I think the programs that Ramya mentioned, kind of programs, online tools like Coursera we use, right, in terms of, and it's in terms of making sure that there is opportunity for both synchronous as well as asynchronous learning happening, right? And synchronous could probably be the classroom session where, or it could be virtual rooms also, because we are a virtual company, right? Where people come in and do training, but they discuss and they leverage. At the same time, asynchronous learning in terms of people learn at their pace. So that is where the individual development plan, to what comes through the appraisal makes sense. So everybody having an individual development plan. There are developmental promotions that we give to employees, that people prepare themselves for a path, career path in future. So make sure that they have access to the right tools, one, access to the right support in terms of within the organization, because I think as an ex-Googler myself also, that 10-20-70 principle that Jyotsna spoke about in the morning is something that I also believe strongly, right? So the learning that comes from the peers becomes important. The learning that comes from the people becomes important. So social learning, mobile learning, online learning, all becomes important. And one of the things that on the 10% side that we found that which is really taking off right now is that we have what we call lunch and learn sessions, which is nothing but using a lunch break that somebody will come and talk about a topic of their interest, which brings in that collaboration between the product team and the risk team and the operations team. So how do you create that cross collaboration platforms also becomes key, rather than just focused on one topic only for the risk team and one topic only for the operations team. So I think those are some of the approaches that we find is adding some value, and I think the employees are asking for more such sessions. Right?
Fantastic. So any key topics that you recall from these lunch and learn sessions? Like what could be an example of what the product team and risk and compliance?
So one of the topics that we did in December, in fact, as a digital-only bank, and we have a chief data officer who sits, and Greg, our CEO, is somebody who is pushing this across the organization. So we had the chief data officer coming and talking about AI and how applications of that are changing the industry and the world. Nice. So that internally the technology team and the product team can probably leverage it and improve some of our processes and build tools.
Fantastic, fantastic. Thank you for that, Manoj. I'll go to Rajiv. Rajiv, from the work that you do at Nolscape, building experiential programs for learning, which is now AI integrated. So what how did you build something that is useful for the banking sector, especially in decision making or leadership, these kind of topics?
Sure, that's a fascinating question. Thanks for asking that. Firstly, Knowlescape's mission is to help organizations and leaders become future ready through experiential learning. Right, two important keywords there. First is future readiness, the other is experiential learning. And different people have a different perspective on future readiness. From our lens, from our vantage point, we tend to think about future of work to begin with, right? And that's a topic many people have spoken about in the past. There are usually 3 W's that people speak about when you are talking about future of work. The first one is work, second is the worker, the third is the workplace. Maybe it's time to add the 4th W, which is the world itself, not enough focus on sustainability and other topics. But let's stay with the first 3, the work, worker, and the workplace. Now, post-pandemic, what you would notice is work is getting futurized. Right? So far, we've all been speaking about AI this and ML that. Right? No meeting today gets over without AI and ML getting mentioned. Is that true for all of you? Yeah. So that's futurization. That's absolutely important. That's business priority. But when it comes to the worker, what we are noticing, again, post-pandemic, we all crave for flexibility and choice, don't we? We all need flexibility and choice. And that's what I think the pandemic taught us, right? We need to take care of our own needs as well. So that's all about personalization. Are we able to use technologies, especially AI, to personalize things for people? Because that's a need of the hour, flexibility and choice. When it comes to the workplace, we are talking about humanizing the workplace, right? While AI is on the rise, tell me if I'm lying here, mental health issues are also on the rise. And there is a direct correlation between the two, and there is enough evidence that this is happening. The more digital we become, more connected we are on the digital world, more disconnected we seem to be in the real world. Is that true? I think I'm speaking some level of truth here. So that's all about humanization of the workplace. So that's diversity and inclusion. Are you able to talk about mental health and well-being? All of those topics are becoming front and center. So just to summarize, the 3 W's, work, worker, and the workplace, futurize, personalize, and humanize. So what we do as Knowlescape is, when we think about future readiness, can we strike a balance between the 3? There are many organizations that over-index on futurizing, saying this is all about data and AI, but they forget the humanization aspect. They forget about before the session began. When it comes to learning, there is a convenience efficacy paradox. In retail, we are all familiar with Blinkit. You're sitting on the couch, you're ordering something, within 5 minutes they deliver something to you. They've removed the friction from the process, right? That's convenience. But at a larger scale, we are creating a disaster that nobody is talking about. If you want to watch a documentary later over the weekend, watch Buy Now on Netflix. It'll reveal the systemic damage that we are creating because of that process. Because back in the day when you had to go buy something from a shop, you had to take your car, you had to get dressed for it, and then you take your wallet, you go buy, stand in the queue, and there is a filter that you apply. Is this really necessary? That was a filter that was very important back then, right? But today, sitting in your couch in your living room, you get a desire, and you click a button or you swipe right, left, whatever it is, and it gets delivered in 5 minutes. That's the world of convenience we are living in. Unfortunately, think about it for yourself. Learning doesn't happen that way. The deepest lessons you've learned in your life, I'm sure, has come through adversity, not through convenience. Am I speaking the truth here? So it comes through adversity. So we need crucible experiences. We need to create experiences for people, challenge them on their mental models, and don't make it convenient. Don't say I've got million courses here, million courses there, you click on it, you'll get. People are not going to learn that way. So that's been our foundational point of view at Knowlescape, that we have to create experiential learning. So what we do as an organization is create simulations, put people in a pressure cooker situation, and challenge their mental models. And we've seen dramatic results at the end of it. And there are some friends in the room, colleagues in the room we've worked with, Girish at HDFC. We've worked in depth at various career levels, Saurabh at Kotak Bank, Union Bank. And I must mention this, being here, has a personal significance for me. My dad was had a career with Union Bank of India, right, about 30 years. So, so I messaged him this morning. Unfortunately, he couldn't join me this morning, but you know, it's a great homecoming feeling for me. And so, finally having the opportunity to work with Union Bank of India means a lot personally for me, right? So, to answer your question, finally, long setup to the answer, but what we are seeing in the banking space, you know, having experienced this here in India and elsewhere across the world, is for sure, I think there is a big push towards digital. Ramya covered that beautifully. That's all futurizing, right? We need to definitely focus on that. But essentially, there is an element of psychological safety that is coming in from a personalization and humanization angle. I'll give you an example. I was talking to the CDO of a bank, and he was saying that we are launching an app that will be on the mobile phones of every salesperson, right? So that app is AI enabled. I asked him, you know, how's the rollout going? He said there's a lot of resistance. I asked him why. He said the response he's getting from the sales folks is, it's great that AI is on my phone, but what else is it doing? What else is it learning from my behavior? So there is an element of psychological safety here. Is it safe to adopt AI? So while we are going deep into AI and digital, I think it's also important to pay attention to personalization and the humanization aspect.
Thank you, Rajiv, for that. As I go to Himanshu now, you've now moved to a B school, and you're immersed in building future leaders there at ISB. So, how do you see AI transform leadership styles, and how can we leverage on AI to build future leaders? Like, how do you see the landscape changing there?
So, when I answer this question, I think I'll break it into two parts. One is how to use AI in the leadership development process. And the second part of the question is, what is AI doing to leaders? Yeah? Both of them are included in your question, right? So let's talk about how AI is being used in the leadership development process. Straight off the bat, I'll say not enough. Right? Is there a possibility? Of course there is a possibility. But I think, business schools included, by the way, we are stuck in time. We are frozen in time a little bit and not using the power of what AI can do. So I'll give you 2 or 3 examples, right? This was at Accenture where I was. We had embarked on a process of competency assessments without asking the individual to rate himself or herself, or ask the supervisor to rate himself. Because it's a pretty well-known fact that these are gamed. Nobody is going to say, I'm not good at something. And depending on your relationship with your supervisor, he is going to tell you whether you're good at something or not good at something. So you're not going to get the truth. So we used data and built algorithms to do it. And how did we do that? We picked up data points on what roles people have played, what experiences they have had. Rajiv, to your point about crucibles and experiences, how many times they've had those experiences, how recent those experiences have been, in relationship to whom else those experiences were in. All that data is available. In our learning management system, it is all available. Are we using it? No. We're still going back to the individual and saying, are you good at project management? Hello, I don't need to ask you. Right? I should be able to figure it out from your experiences. So that's one place. I think skill assessments, competency assessments, using data, big data and AI should be par for the course by now. But not enough people are doing it. Another example, and this has got to do with how you define leadership. Jyotsna was talking in the morning about Project Oxygen. So I actually teach a case on Project Oxygen in one of my classes on analytics. What she didn't tell you is after Project Oxygen, there was Project Aristotle. And Project Aristotle was not about leaders, but about teams. What makes up a good team and what makes a bad team? In the Google context, by the way. And so when she says those 7 attributes, I would hesitate to say that that transports to Union Bank of India. It doesn't. That was Google specific. Because it came out of a deep analytics exercise that they did at Google with quantitative and qualitative data. So my point is, can we not use data a little more and AI a little more to figure out what a good leader in Union Bank is, or what a good team in Union Bank means? Because our context is different. We are a far more regulated industry. We are a public sector. We have a lot many more, shall I say, constraints and opportunities that we exist within. So why don't we do more of that? That's an opportunity in leadership development. Another opportunity, and this is, how many of you have used or heard about Khan Academy? You have, right? So in the latest version of Khan Academy, I was fascinated. He has developed something called Khanmigo. So amigo, right? The Latin amigo, which is your friend. So Khanmigo is a personalized tutor. It's an AI-based chatbot, essentially. But he's a personalized tutor. You can interact with that person, with that chatbot. And depending upon how you respond to it, the chatbot will give you different tests of different varying levels of difficulty. So constantly push you into areas of discomfort, crucibles. Again, to your point about learning doesn't happen when you're in an area of comfort, it happens when you're in an area of discomfort. But what does discomfort mean to me and to you, Savin, is very different. It depends on the context we come from. Who can do that personalization better than AI? So another opportunity to use AI in leadership development. And the list goes on. That you can almost take every stage of leadership development, all the way from assessment to content development, to content design, to content delivery, to follow-up, to feedback, and back to that whole thing. And you will find tons of opportunities for using AI. Now come to the later part of your question. What is AI doing to leaders? Or what is this whole, how is it changing or should change leaders? I think 2 or 3 things, right? One, the responsibility on the leader who is the user of AI has gone up manifold, right? For all the reasons that Ramya, you were mentioning, and which is, AI is only as good as the human who's using the AI. Let's be honest. It doesn't have any superpowers. In fact, there is plenty of evidence to show that predictions are not accurate. Right? There is plenty of evidence to show that prediction has limits. It's all a function of what you feed in and how you train it. Back to our analogy of the child and the values you inculcate in the child. Yeah? So for the leader who is a user of AI, you need to be extremely, shall I say, AI literate. Doesn't mean you need to know coding. No. But you need to ask the right questions when some analysis is shown to you. Like, how are the samples run up? What data did you use? Can you tell me whether there was sufficient diversity in the sample of data that you pulled up? How did you ensure that there are no biases? The algorithmic biases that someone was referencing earlier in the morning, I think it was Jyotsna who was mentioning it. So that's all a responsibility on the leader. So that's at one level, it means how do I become more AI literate, which means understand what AI can do, but more importantly, understand what it cannot do. Especially for CHROs, especially for us HR professionals. It's easy to predict supply chain, honestly. No big deal, right? Inventory stockouts, I can easily predict. And 99% there would be reasonable accuracy. Human and social phenomena, be very careful. AI has its limits on what it can predict. So if you're trying to predict who's going to attrite, which I think a lot of people do, I know many of you banks have also embarked on that journey. Can that AI algorithm actually do it? It will improve with time as you give it more data, as you train it, etc., etc. But you need to be careful about how you interpret those findings. So the human in the loop is very important, right? So that's one. The other aspect of AI that I think is the more and more you use digital, not just AI, more and more you use digital, the more and more you use algorithms, etc., for decision making, the more and more humanistic you'll have to become. Because it leads to all the various things that Rajiv and the others were referencing, mental issues, health issues, burnout, blah, 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 etc., etc. My view is the machine revolution has sped ahead. The human revolution is far behind. Because we are still stuck in Alfred Sloan's times. We are still using leadership theories and management theories from Alfred Sloan's time. Business schools have not moved on, and I am a member of a business school, I'm saying it openly. Neither have corporates moved on. And this is sad in a country like India, where in our Vedas, in our Upanishads, in our scriptures, there is so much of learning about what leadership means. Right? But we are still using those Western philosophies. They don't work here. Certainly not in the age of AI. So with that provocative statement, I'll shut up.
Thank you, Himanshu, for that perspective. I had a follow-up question, right? And this is interestingly, the digitally native organizations have done really well, and Raji was referencing to convenience clicks. So the way they capture data is very different from the way, let's say, an automotive company captures data, or a tractor company or a banking company captures data, because now we are doing it out of, I think, consciously we're trying to capture more data. So there's a way, for example, the sales data of how many mutual funds we've sold or things like that is not a very dynamic data. But what a Netflix can do is predict that, okay, which movie has Himanshu watched, and what kind of genre of movie he likes, and I'll sort of personalize and hyper-personalize, because I'm collecting data as you're consuming versus collecting data as it is sold, or it is not very dynamic. So from a learning and development standpoint, you mentioned that we need to have this data at the back end of what are the projects this professional has been involved in. So any thoughts on how we can capture this data in a more as consumed versus, I can insert cases where I've done exceptionally well in project management and so on. Yeah. So just a thought on how can we do better in capturing this data, because please go ahead.
I just want to react to that question per se, because I think, Himanshu, when he was talking, I think he was mentioning about the human aspect to it, right? So from an L&D perspective, right, for example, one of the things that I'm very excited, and that project is going on as we speak right now, is this of, I talked about the individual development plan that has to be created. So, and then, the manager, so every individual has an individual development plan, which talks about his or her career requirement in the current job, future job. What are the skills that he or she is looking at in terms of building? Second thing is that in terms of the manager's perspective, right? Okay, this employee, what does he need more to do better in the current job, or what job he is going to do in the future? So we marry these two and create a document, right? That means that everybody has an individual development plan. And we are looking at using AI tools, and the tools are available today as we speak, and I've tested it on employee satisfaction data. That's why I can say with that much conviction that we can marry that with a list of training programs we already have, or we want to create. So AI, with just having, if you complete the process and have this documentation done for each and every person, right? And then you kind of have a list of programs. This data can be married. You don't need a manual intervention here, which means the human is involved in terms of shaping his or her, and that is where the personalization come in. And then you look at what is available online, what is available within the organization, and then you create a individual learning plan for that person through the year. And that is easy to do. It doesn't take much time. Because I mentioned about the employee satisfaction survey, I can tell you what we did on that. Because last year when we did the employee satisfaction survey, it took me almost 2.5 weeks to get all my HR business partners to analyze the data, read through the content part. These are the comments we are talking of. There are some open-ended questions that we ask our employees. We could do that analysis in few hours, because you have a data in terms of, you have AI tools which are available that can take the content and give you a summary. Okay, you may have to validate that. I can validate it and say that, okay, the operations team, these are the key issues they are having. These are the key things they're happy about. right? I can take my finance team and look at it. I can look at the Tonic Bank overall and look at it, right? So those tools are available today for you to use, which will help you in terms of like, that is where the data, you don't have to go and collect a lot of data. Data is already available. Whatever is available, how can you use it? Not only for quantitative analysis, qualitative analysis also. That is the power that AI gives you.
I think the qualitative analysis is the key in AI.
I'll just add to that.
Yeah, please.
I think, as a lot of you here are learning and development professionals, you know about Kirkpatrick's scale, right? We're all fixated on measuring level 1 and level 2. Yeah, which is level 1 is, what did you think about this program? Feedback. And level 2 is a little ahead of that, saying, okay, I'll ask the supervisor. Why don't we start measuring behaviors? Behaviors are easy to measure. Whether I show up on a call on time or not, it can be measured. Why don't we measure that? Right? How quickly I reply to emails, that can be measured. Right? I mean, you can do org network analysis, right? Which is basically anyone who has an Office subscription can do it. Office actually gives you that facility, Microsoft Office. It can give you at a metadata level, by department, by function, by area, by geography, by anything, by branch, what is the network of communication happening inside that branch? Over Teams, over Outlook and whatever else. So behavior is the best way to measure, right? And then chart development plans based on behaviors.
Absolutely. I think there's a,
something to that. That's a brilliant point Himanshu just raised. We talk about leaders who need to be inclusive, for example, right? How do you measure something like that? Today on Teams, you get a lot of this data around how leaders conduct meetings. If I have a 10-member team, did all the 10 have a voice? Did they all speak? As a leader, did I invite questions from everybody? So today you get a lot of those analytics. So I think that myth can be exploded now that behaviors cannot be measured or cannot be made scientific. I think we've gone past that. Today technologies are available. And the one thing at Nullscape that we are doing is, back in the day we used to create a lot of simulations, putting people in real life like situations and seeing how they respond. The pressure cooker crucible that we were talking about earlier. Today the role of AI is we are able to create unscripted situations. So through generative AI, you could say in a banking context, I'm a relationship manager, I have an angry customer in front of me. Earlier, you used to put in that effort to craft that scenario, write the script, review it, and then create a... So all of that has been crunched right now because of AI. You are able to create in-context learning experiences powered by AI, and it's a conversational experience, right? You are able to speak into the mic, record your video, you get feedback, and that's all behaviors that get measured, right? Today, it is possible, and we need to make use of it.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a
Saveen, if I may just add
please,
and continue this thought. Now, if you look at, first of all, I hope everybody is aware that although we are talking about Gen AI, it's just predicting the next word. So it is not actually intelligence, and therefore what you feed into it is most important. So I thought I'll just put it out there so that we have context of, although Gen AI is so powerful, AI is super powerful, right? Gen AI, which is that portion of it which predicts the next word, can be used in a variety of use cases specifically to teaching and learning process. And because of the audience here, that's what I want to focus on. The reason why we feel that the use of this technology is useful is because when I spoke of all the trends that are happening, the shifts that are happening, now you are in charge of making sure that your workforce is able to move with it. Your business strategy is going to be able to move with those trends. And for you to be able to do it at scale, consistently and effectively, you have to use a technology like Gen AI. And when it comes to Gen AI and its use for teaching, how can you teach better? Two examples are what Himanshu and Raji spoke about. As an HR, Manoj spoke about how you can use it to analyze behavior patterns and chalk out individual development plans. One part which is very, very useful is for you to actually use generative AI to create the teaching and learning content for your specific context. from a Coursera perspective, I'm speaking of Coursera because I am a Courserian, but it applies to many of the new age learning technology tools out there. Using generative AI software can bring down your content production time by up to 75% without compromising on quality. And therefore, that is something you should definitely look at on whichever tool or software you're using. The second thing, and more importantly, is from the learning point of view. It is very, very difficult to get your employee base to spend time on Coursera. We would want them to do deep learning, but it's very difficult to do that. And that's where Gen AI can make it personalized and do it at scale. Khanmigo, which Himanshu spoke about, there are many tutors like that. For those of you who have used Coursera, we have our own version called an in-course coach. And because you're in banking, I also have to qualify that statement by saying that that coach is grounded in some basic ethical guiding principles of fairness, security, data privacy, transparency, etc. But what this coach does is 3 things. 1, to prevent any hallucination, this kind of an Gen AI based tutor is grounded in the material that you're offering for studying to your employee. It is not going to look at the whole internet and then throw out things which are not true. Second, it is trained to be Socratic, meaning if I ask a question as a learner and want a shortcut, it will not answer it. It will respond back by giving a hint and then asking me a question or throwing a situation at me, which is what the experience that Raji spoke about. The third thing, when it comes to assessment, this kind of a tutor can be trained to help me assess myself so that I'm prepared for a final assessment. You want to do practice quizzes. You want to do role plays. Absolutely gem of a tool to do role plays. Imagine having 20,000 people and you are having to orchestrate role plays for them. You can use a tool like that. In fact, within Coursera, we did some research also to back some of this to say, is it really helpful to invest in Gen AI to improve the learning process? And what we found from some early investment is, 1, when you have this kind of a coach, you can see anywhere from 3 to 13% increase in retaining that learner's attention on that learning platform. Second, those who were exposed to this kind of content and teaching experience were 10% more likely to complete that course, to complete an assessment. And finally, for those of the learners who used AI for reviewing, assessment, evaluation, the course completions grew by 16%. That means this is really very helpful in learner retention and learner engagement, which is a classic problem for L&D, which has not been solved. It's really a very wicked problem. But when you look at how do I use AI for my learning, for your learning function, these are some of the considerations to keep in mind. Coursera is one such platform which is already doing it. Knowlescape, of course, I'm sure uses AI in their interventions, and there'll be many others as well. But please do keep this technology leverage that you have in mind when you're doing L&D at scale.
Thank you, Ramya, for that. I just want to double down on one aspect of the answer that you gave.
Yeah.
You said personalized content creation, and
Yeah.
that could be a big agenda for us in the room here, and reduces by 70%, 75% in terms of time.
Time taken, yeah.
So which aspect of it is AI supported, or what makes it faster? If you have any highlights on which aspect,
Sure,
what
sure.
tools we can use, or just doubling down on that.
Sure. I can do that, and then I'll definitely ask Raji to share
Yeah,
how
yeah.
he does it on Knowlescape. I will give you the Coursera perspective, right? What we do is we have our course builder engine, and we fed into it 2 important things. One, our pedagogical framework. Coursera follows something called a mastery-based pedagogy. So we feed the pedagogical framework into Course Builder. The second thing we feed into it is our content repository, all the existing content that we have. Those are the 2 important things. And then what we expose to the trainer is to say, tell me, what is the topic that you want to teach? Who's your learning audience? What are the learning objectives? What is the duration of the course? Do you have any material like an outline, a course outline, a syllabus, or a program outline that you have? Feed all of this to me. The course builder then uses those pedagogical frameworks to design a scaffold and an online course outline. then it will go back to you and it will ask you, look, I think this is a good course outline. What do you think? You, and that's where the humanizing element comes in. It has to be a co-intelligent word. It can't be only artificial intelligence. So you as a human trainer, because you know your audience better and you know their context better, you will say, no, this doesn't work, this doesn't work. And you keep going back and forth with it till you finalize an outline. Once you say, yes, this is good, on Coursera, this is what happens. What Coursera will then do is take that outline and say, okay, if this is your outline, 50% of it is already available on Coursera in our repository. So I'm putting that together in this draft. Now you upload, wherever there's a gap and you find that Coursera doesn't have that content, you upload your material or you bring in your synchronous training sessions and then complete that course. So this is one way where we use Coursera generative AI course builder to build out training material.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Rajiv,
Thank you for
over to
sharing
you.
that, Rajiv.
Thanks, Ramya. That was so beautifully articulated. So I'll give you a couple of real life case studies, right, that where we have used AI. One was with TCS. As you know, at TCS, they have at any point in time 20,000, 30,000. Accenture probably had similar numbers back in the day. If you look at the profile of some of these people sitting on the bench, chances are they are from a tier 3, tier 4 town. English language is an issue, right? But the organization provides English language training to these people. But there is a gap between providing English language training to positioning this person in front of a client who's sitting in the US or UK who is having a business conversation with you. And this is an interview process. Only when they clear this can they be deployed in a live project. So it is a business opportunity. So what we helped TCS with is really using Gen AI and AI more generally is create a day in the life of kind of an experience. Can we create a day in the life of a developer, a tester, right? Where you will get a phone call, you will get an email, you will get a conversation with some person sitting in the US. And in that process, you are really demonstrating your behaviors. Are you being proactive? Are you articulating well? How is your basic English? All of that, right, got captured. And in the end, you get a report that is mapped to the CFR rating. There's a rating for business communication, A1, A2, B1, B2, and so on. That's the output we were able to create, using which the organization was able to fast track a few people and make them client ready. So this is AI being used in a day in the life of context, right, which is out and out in their context. It's not off the shelf. But the amount of time that we got from TCS is barely a few weeks, where they said, this is all we've got. We've got a window of 1 quarter, and we need to get 12,000 people to be deployed in client projects, and here we go. So the turnaround that happened within that short amount of time was just fascinating to watch. It wouldn't have been possible without AI being in the picture.
Fantastic.
I mean, both of them have talked about how content development can be improved, right?
reduced, yeah.
I want to talk to you about how pedagogy itself can be changed,
Yeah.
right? Today, most business schools or even executive education, even places like use case studies, correct? Case study is a very important medium of sort of instruction. We are replacing, in ISB, we are replacing case studies with virtual reality and Gen AI. So I'm teaching a course right now on international strategy. And we talk about taking students through a virtual reality video and tour into the guts of Kenya. And they can experience what it is to buy and sell in Kenya and what is e-commerce like in Kenya. Because that's what the case is about. It's about mobile commerce, right?
So the case study comes to
The
life.
case study is immersive. You don't read 30 pages. You just watch a 4-minute VR clip and you make up all the rest of the assumptions. And the way you make it up might be different from the way he makes it up. But we are giving you that much more latitude. And then you back that up with an AI tutor, a Gen AI based AI tutor. Right? So it's not just content development, pedagogy can be changed. I mean, measurements can be changed. It's like there's a revolution waiting for L&D professionals.
I think what we also spoke about is how content was very important in the erstwhile L&D world today context is more important. And what Gen AI does is backs you up with that context in a fast-tracked way. Otherwise, based on the cases that both of you mentioned, right? To contextualize the content to a banking sector would take me days or months, and here I'm able to deploy that really quick. And the contextualization is the focus. So I think that's really interesting. I just want to go back to Ramya, and then we'll start another round, and then I'll open. I don't know how much time we have left. We're done. Okay. So then maybe some questions from the audience is a good way to open up the floor and get some questions from the audience, maybe for another couple of minutes. So does anybody? Yes.
I'm a bit from the old school, and talking about one, when you talked of
Can we have
using
hand mics being passed around, if that's okay?
at this point. Yeah, talking about using AI to measure.
You need a mic, sir.
Okay. But using AI to measure behavior, using that measures as a part of performance of employees. Now that is where I'm slightly in a dilemmatic position. Now once we understand technology, we also understand what technology can, what technology could, what technology should not also. Now, on one side, when we want to make it more humanistic, there's a role of the leader also. A leader works with the employees, so they have the the interactions. They know about the behaviors of employees. So rather than using an indirect approach to convey to the employee that these are your behavioral traits that we have measured, you have found out, and the data is there. Rather than that, why not tell directly that I know you like this, and there is a conflict situation, resolve that conflict. So why not keep our workplace in that sense? Why depend upon leaders?
So I'm assuming that question is for me because I raised that. Look, if a leader could tell, by now you should have done it. The problem is most leaders want to take the soft approach. Don't want to give any hard messages. Is there a fact or not? So at least this data is arming you to be able to give the right message. Think of it that way.
Yeah, I think it's a not a
Evidence-based.
or
It's not an
approach.
or.
Yeah, it's an and approach.
It's definitely an and. But to say that you should not use data and I should rely on the humans, well, then you should have done it by now. Right?
So I think I will just add one more thing there.
It
I
gives
think
you more
the
power
way,
in terms
the
of
way I see it here is that it's not that you're removing the leader. The leader is having an additional tool in his hand to see further, and it's all about pattern recognition, especially when you use it in human interventions. A lot of times, like attrition. Attrition is predicted by organizations. It's a probability. So what it means is that if you are employees in my organization, I can have, based on past attrition data, I can build a model, and these models have been there for many years now. It's not that with AI it came. Predictive models are there. AI has made it easier for you to deploy it, right? So absolutely, these models were there. So now you have more data coming in, which makes the probability much higher. Just because Virat Kohli's average is this much doesn't mean that next time he's going to score that much. It's a probability. So as a leader, you need to interpret that, and you need to use that insight to have better conversations. That's probably how I look at it. It's not going to replace leaders for sure.
In fact, it'll make your position stronger.
Make it more evidence-based. Any
Yeah,
other
I
questions?
was just going to add the cricketing analogy to this, right? It's a beautiful way to understand business as well. From a 5-day cricket match to 1-day international to T20, that's exactly what's happening with business. Business cycles are shrinking, product cycles are shrinking, it has to fit into a certain format. But the one thing you will realize is ball by ball, shot by shot, we have analytics. Right? That, there is commentary is now being done by AI. If you go to cricinfo.com, there's nobody typing that anymore. It's able to watch the video and it is able to write everything on its own, right? So if so much can happen in cricket, end of the day, when India loses to Australia, Gautam Gambhir has to answer that question. It's back to leadership. Rohit Sharma has to answer that question, right? So I don't think we are replacing the role of the leader, but the leader has enormous insights, ball by ball. Today we are talking about era of hyper specialization. It's not good enough to be a fast bowler. You have to be a good death bowler in T20 to be selected in a team, right? And that comes from data, that level of specialization.
In fact, sports have used data. Sports and gambling are the two places that have used data for ages and have done amazing jobs with it. I mean, there is a whole book, right? There's a whole movie also, right, about this? Moneyball. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, sir.
No, let me take that because I have had an academic career as well. Absolutely not. The way you teach, the way you engage, the experience that you create for your class changes. As a learning person, like as a faculty, I used to be a full-time academic before I came this. So if from industry I came to academia, then I back to industry. I still teach in some places. It has made my job much more easier, which means that I don't have to spend time on slides or content as much. I need to spend time more in terms of the situation, the scenarios, and creating those discussions and managing those discussions in class. And that is much more enriching, right? Like, you are asking questions, and I think that I'm sure that is given more energy to the audience. So the classes are going to be that.
Correct.
And people have multiple ways of learning also. So you don't teach knowledge, right? Knowledge, skills, yes, you build. Knowledge everybody has on their fingertips. It's about helping them to look at the right area, helping them to understand that and apply in their situation. And that makes, I think, intellectually your job's much more enriching the way I see it.
Yeah.
Can I add something to this?
Yeah, please. I think the question is more around also with engaging methods change is the question around physical learning spaces be required? I think that's a larger question along with what you said.
Yeah. So the one idea I think that's quite useful is to understand value migration. Whenever a new technology comes in, there's a mad rush towards it. We think that's where the value is. But over time, that value also shifts, right? And that's what we need to watch out for. And one of the things that's very counterintuitive is when people talk about Gen Z, right, as if they came from another planet, right? They say, okay, this generation is completely digital. They wouldn't care about in-classroom experience or a physical place like this. Talk to them about getting a Coldplay ticket. Talk to them about Ed Sheeran concert, right? It's happening next weekend, I think, in Bangalore. They are craving for live experiences because otherwise their world is completely digital. As long as we are able to create a great experience for them in a physical space, that is where the value will migrate. Physical experiences is where the true value will come, right? And so it's upon us to be design thinkers, in your domain, design thinkers to create a compelling design in a physical environment, and then we would have won the game.
And so to Rajiv's point, right, I don't think learning centers will become irrelevant because AI will do everything. It will become irrelevant if we don't keep pace with the expectations of the internet generation. I don't like this label Gen Z, like Rajiv. But the label I use is pre-internet and post-internet. The post-internet generation has a very different approach to everything. And so we will use them. That's how we'll become irrelevant.
Yeah, actually, just adding on to this, right? I've been leading some very interesting immersive experiences in physical setups over the last decade or so. And one of the things we do is gamify the whole learning in a physical setup as well. So how do we use gamification in a way that it's meaningful for the people who are we worked with the managing directors of consulting firms to senior leaders who are building strategy, and they said it has been so much fun building strategy in a way you led us. So the space, the way we utilize the space completely changes, but we still need that space. We still need that physical interaction to build a strategy for the organization. People are flying in from across the world to just meet each other. Can we now use that time in a meaningful way? So how do we leverage the space better and maybe adapt with time? I think that's a key question to ask. So is this still needed, or so on and so forth? I think that's a stronger question to ask. Maybe we'll take one last question and then we'll close. And so this question has to be really good.
Yeah.
This is the climax of our panel. So no,
Yeah,
so
this-
only if you think the question is outstanding.
Yeah, so I
Okay,
will try
still
my
going
best.
into it.
So that is one critical question here. When we see the use of the models, so it always comes with risk, right?
Risk.
So we talked about this content creation. So one example, for example, I'm using this Copilot for creation of content.
Right.
And my question is, what is model? And what is the risk associated with using these generative AI models? And answers I'm getting from this generative AI, and how reliable answers they are giving, I don't know. So what is guidance of this panel on this?
Yeah.
Sure. So we spoke about AI being a child,
Yeah.
right? So children hallucinate. We all know this, right? We do as well. As adults, we hallucinate. So you ask a child what happened in school today. The child is, based on the mood, is going to talk about some story which probably did not even happen. Has that happened to you as a parent?
Yeah.
So that's hallucination. AI is just reflecting human behavior, right? From that perspective, I'll tell you a recent example. You all have a book in front of you, Clearing the Digital Blur. I'm the author of the book. And I asked ChatGPT, can you give me a summary of this book? I just wanted to check how accurate is it, right? And blur in digital blur is an acronym that stands for 4 different dimensions of business, right? 4 different lines that are blurring away. Now, ChatGPT gave me a response, and I read this, and I was like, that's so convincing, but it is untrue, right? BLUR, they stand for 4 different things. You will find that in the book. It has used completely different words for it, and it means completely different things. Now, here is the risk, to your point on risk, right? As an author who has authored this book, I know this is fake. But someone else sitting out of somewhere else asking the same question, getting that response, they will consider that to be true and probably act on it. Right? When we talk about agentic AI now, we are going beyond just insights to actions, where you will give control to agents to act on your behalf. And if that agent is going to get fed with incorrect information like this, disaster is waiting to happen. So there is a real risk.
So then I will take Rajiv's point to the next level and say, so therefore use Gen AI when you are the expert and you are in control.
Yeah.
Don't use Gen AI when you know nothing about the subject, because it can take you to the garden and back. Right?
Yeah.
So be careful when you use it. You have to have deep expertise, then it can be your assistant.
Yeah. It's a tireless intern who can work for you, but you have to
That's
give the
right,
right
that's
direction.
right.
Yeah.
For example, I think you said you are in the content space and you're using it to ingest content and create content. We did one, which is not a published study, but we were just trying out using generative AI to create questions for assessment, multiple choice questions, and then we said, let's run it through a human in the loop to review it. We found that around 30%, roughly 25 to 30% of the questions generated by the tool had to be revised. That is today. Of course, as the technology evolves, this number will come down, and we'll also go through that entire hype, trough, and then the plateauing that Gartner talks about with this, and we will reach a better steady state where you know exactly how much you can rely on it or not. But as of now, the human in the loop is very essential for certain critical things like this.
I just want to add one more thing here, because I have done this personally, right, for one context. So I have kind of fed a book, PDF book, asked them to extract from the chapter and give me information. So if you give context to the same question and say, Rajiv's book, take Rajiv's book, read it, summarize it, and tell me what blur stands for, it will tell you. So it's a lot of times about what you're asking it and the context.
Notebook LM. Notebook LM is a great tool which will have lesser degree of hallucination. It's really good for ingesting PDFs and then helping you do secondary research on it.
It's a Google Notebook LM where you can feed 50 different resources and it'll tell you from which book it has taken the definition, or like Rajiv mentioned, or perplexity. Yeah.
Perplexity is very good.
Yeah, so it's a lot of, you have to give context to the AI. I really loved what Rajiv said about it being a child at this stage, being aware of what it can do and cannot do. And I think we are at an age which, I think we are at a very interesting phase of our careers and lifetime where things are going to be very different from now on. So it's a great place to be because we don't know where it's going to take us. And I had a lot of fun and a lot of learning during this entire panel discussion. And let's give the panelists a big round of applause for having that childlike curiosity to answer and give more to this group. Thank you. Thank you so much once again. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you
So
so much.
we extend our heartfelt thank on behalf of Union Bank of India to our esteemed panelists, Saveen Hegde, Himanshu Tambe, Rajiv Jairam, Ramya Srinivasan Madam, and Manoj Varghese. Can we